So when Bitcoin today is trading well below Metcalfe's law of value, we start accumulating. So we've been buying a little bit every week since February, and we'll continue to do that, probably through October or so. Sometime around October 5th or 4th, we should be done with this part of winter, and then we start going back up. The level of valuation in the AI companies is beyond silly. It's stupid. SpaceX is the equivalent of Dogecoin. Ultimately, those things are going to collapse.
A bubble that is poised to burst would probably cause a massive crash also in Bitcoin and crypto.
No.
Metcalfe's law is the best way to establish Bitcoin's fair value, thinks hedge fund manager Mark Yusko. But how can that help us find the bottom of this bear market? Are AI stocks on the verge of a dot-com style correction? And if they are, what could that mean for Bitcoin? These are some of the topics we discussed with Mark in our latest conversation. This is an interview you don't want to miss. Looking at Metcalfe law right now, where do you see the fair price of Bitcoin?
Yeah, so as I understand it, and I haven't talked to Tim. Tim Peterson is the guy that does the model that I like the most. I mean, there are a number of people who calculate Metcalfe's law values for Bitcoin. But what I like about Tim Peterson's model is his decay factor in the model is a little higher. Because if you think about a network, right? Think about your friend network. There are people you knew when you were young who you kept in touch with for a while, and then they kind of fade out of your network and they get replaced with new people. And then those people fade, and so networks change. And the number of people that leave a network, the decay rate, has to be positive. A lot of the early Metcalfe's law said, oh, there'd be no decay. Once a person becomes a Bitcoiner, they're going to be a Bitcoiner forever. Maybe, but not necessarily. People pass away, people change their mind. So long story short, I think Tim's model today says Metcalfe's value is somewhere still like 105, 108, something like that, significantly higher than where we are today. Now, why would that be? Well, we talked about this. The 4-year cycle, which a lot of people tried to say was dead and that institutionalization was going to get rid of it. I'm like, no, humans are going to human, and humans are going to follow this pattern because the 4-year cycle is baked into the code. It's hard coded into Bitcoin. I may say, Mark, what are you talking about? Well, every 4 years, we have the block rewards. So we cut the number of rewards in half. So in theory, if the miners who are mining to protect the network, to secure the network, if suddenly their revenues get cut in half, some of them would go out of business. Well, what's their incentive then? Then their incentive is to not to sell the Bitcoin until the price rises so they can cover their costs. And so there's a natural movement that's incentivized by the halving for the price to rise. Well, when something starts moving, when the price starts rising, that attracts attention. And that attention pushes the price even further. And then at some point, it gets to the speculators and the gamblers, and they come in with leverage, and we get the price to go way above fair value. And that's where we were last October, is we were way above fair value. And unfortunately, then humans are going to human. They're going to panic. They're going to sell. The speculators on the other side come in and short, and they push the price back below fair value. And the people that don't have conviction, meaning they don't either understand the fair value of the asset, or they don't know why they're in the asset, they just bought it because it was moving, they lose conviction and they sell. And that pushes the price well below fair value following this cycle. So we go into crypto winter, where we are today. So TikTok next block, the blockchain just keeps moving along. The network keeps growing. The number of participants, the number of transactions, the dollar volume of transactions, that'll just keeps going up. The hash rate just keeps going up. But unfortunately, that Metcalfe's law of value is the anchor to windward, but the price tends to move in a sine wave, higher and lower, overvalued, undervalued. So when we crashed back through 90K last fall and we went into this big sell off in February, going down to the lows of, 60K, people were in panic mode. Now, what's nice is in the previous cycles, we went down 84%, 83%, and 74%. This time we went down around 51%. So people are saying, well, it's going to go down more by October. And sometime around October 5th or 4th, we should be done with this part of winter. And then we start going back up. The number of Bitcoin owned by whales is rising again because they are the buyers of last resort. They're the long-term hodlers, the long-term investors. Investors, I consider myself in this category. I love to buy two types of things. I like to buy something below fair value. That's how I really like to do it because I'm a value guy. But I will also buy something close to fair value if I think it's growing really fast. So some of the computing companies and the like would fall into that category. But I tend to be a value person. So when Bitcoin today is trading well below Metcalfe's law of value, we start accumulating. So we've been buying a little bit every week since February, and we'll continue to do that, probably through October or so. And then we'll enjoy the ride on the other side.
Strategy just a couple of days ago announced it sold 3,588 Bitcoin last week to replenish their dollar reserves and to fund dividends. So the impact on Bitcoin price has been quite insignificant, I would say. So
Yeah.
what was your personal reaction to that event?
I think the market's finally understanding what strategy is, which is to create this capital structure, this capital stack with, the digital asset Bitcoin, the digital equity on top of that, MSTR, and then layers of digital credit above that, from preferred stock to convertible bonds to ultimately, if he wants to, he could do straight debt. But, he's been on record saying you don't sell your Bitcoin. Well, right. If you own a small number of Bitcoin, you should not sell your Bitcoin. You should just keep accumulating Bitcoin. But his strategy is to build this behemoth company that over time accumulates Bitcoin, but uses on occasion some of the liquidity to fund payments to dividends and preferred shareholders. So, when he did the first sale maybe 6, 7 weeks ago of 32 Bitcoin, right? Insignificant amount. And the market freaked. I mean, we went from 64 down to 58 again. And people were predicting the end of the world. And he's like, guys, I told you this was going to happen. I'm just showing you that it can happen. I think this time, the first reaction was a pretty, decent drop, 3, 4%. But then people were, okay, he told us he was going to do it. He did it. Net, he's been an accumulator of Bitcoin this year, right? He issued some debt, some preferreds, bought some Bitcoin. Now he's paying some interest, but net, he acquired net amount of Bitcoin, which is the whole strategy. So long answer to say, I think people are finally figuring out it's okay that over time there will be transactions on his balance sheet. It's not just buy it, tuck it in a box, and do nothing with it. He's now creating a set of instruments that people like myself can invest in and earn very nice yields relative to traditional fixed income.
There is a narrative related to this AI trade.
Yeah.
A lot of talk about all the capital being sucked into this trade in the last few months, and that's also a reason why Bitcoin has been underperforming. But a lot of people now are talking about capital rotation, so capital flowing back from AI into Bitcoin. And according to some analysts, that could happen in a couple of months, coinciding with this four cycle theory. So what are your thoughts on this rotation of capital? Do you think it's going to happen?
I think absolutely capital is a relatively finite resource. Now, it does grow every year as the global monetary expansion continues. So it's not completely fixed, but there's a relatively consistent growth of capital. And so that capital, it's like squeezing an air in a balloon. It's got to go somewhere. And if a lot of capital's going into new AI companies, that does leave less for things like gold. You see gold and silver are, having really tough years this year, Bitcoin having a tough year. I think that's related somewhat, although I think there are a lot of people that view Bitcoin as a risk on speculative asset like NASDAQ and they're interchangeable. I don't think they're that at all, right? I think people own Bitcoin or gold or silver or platinum for very different reasons than they own equities or AI companies. So that said, I do think there's capital that has rotated into speculative equities and debt. Look at Kospi and the Thai. I mean the Taiwanese stock market, right? Taiwan is a little tiny island that doesn't even have that many people, and its stock market was like the sixth largest in the world. I mean, it's just silly because they have one big company that makes all the semiconductors. And same thing with Korea. They have these memory companies that went crazy, and now it trades at almost 4 times GDP. Just stupid. Now it's down 20% in the last 5 days. Probably going to go down a lot more. Does all of that trigger a 1929-esque collapse this fall in the US? Certainly possible. I mean, it's kind of ironic that the book 1929 came out, earlier this year or late last year. And it is interesting. There is this 90 plus year cycle that tends to repeat itself. Certainly possible. I'm not calling for a big crash, but it's the level of valuation in the AI companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and then things like SpaceX that are like the valuation of SpaceX today relative to its earnings power and earnings growth and revenues is there's no other word for it. It's silly, right? It's actually stupid. It's beyond silly. It's stupid. Doesn't mean it can't stay that way for a while, but ultimately those things are going to collapse. As that equity leaves, I do think some will find its way into Bitcoin and gold and other stores of value. I could see a pretty meaningful switch in the fourth quarter. Let's say a September, October adjustment happens in global equity markets. I'm not saying it will happen, but let's just say for a thought experiment that it does. That would create trillions of dollars of losses and would pressure some portion of that capital before it gets lost into safe havens. That could trigger a pretty meaningful rally in Bitcoin prices. I think less so in the other alts markets, but definitely in Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum, but really Bitcoin. I do think that's reasonably likely, actually. And that'll be the start of crypto spring. But remember, crypto spring doesn't mean straight up. Spring is like this. It's kind of wavy and choppy, and there's a little bit of upward trajectory, but not a lot. Then we get into summer the next year, and that's pre-halving, election, all kinds of questions. So you get a lot more volatility, still an upward drift, but it's really that third year or the post-halving year that we get the big rally. And that's when, I think we could see, 29, we could see big numbers again.
Yeah, because the next halving, I think it's scheduled for 2028, I
Yep.
think. Regarding this scenario where we're going to see a crash in tech stocks and essentially this bubble that is going to burst, there is a lot of talking about a bubble that is
Yeah.
poised to burst at a certain point. That, in my opinion, would probably cause a massive crash also in Bitcoin and crypto, essentially, because that's how these assets have been always behaving. So when there is a
No,
big crash,
no. So there, okay, and it's a really important point. The subtle difference is Historically, the adjustment in pricing in equities, whether it was the COVID lockdowns or the recession a couple of years ago, those were during periods where there was a lot of speculative excess in the crypto markets. This time we've washed all that out. The amount of leverage in the crypto markets is actually very low right now. So I'll argue, I could be wrong, but I'll argue that you won't see the same adjustment downward in crypto as you normally would because you're not unwinding these silly speculative excesses. That's already been unwound. From October to February, that's when the bad amount of leverage was unwound. Now we just don't have that much leverage. Could you drop another 10 or 15, 20%? Sure, anything's possible. But I'm going to go with if it's really like a 2000 or a 29 or a 73, what you saw in those periods was the safe havens gapped up and gapped up a lot. Gold in particular, we didn't have Bitcoin back then, but that's what I think is more likely.
So you are a big critic of the recent SpaceX IPO, and you consider Elon Musk a great storyteller. Can you explain why you are so critical?
It's kind of what Elon has done. He did it with Tesla. He floated a small amount, got a hype around it, got a lot of people to jump on the cult, and then he engineered a big short squeeze. Remember, he did the shorts thing, did a big short squeeze. Price went up 10 times. The price has been dead flat for 4.5 years. Revenues are down. Free cash flow is negative. Company is basically on the verge of a real problem because of BYD, but he did it with Tesla. He makes Tesla look like a practice run with what he did with SpaceX. He only floated 4%. So 4% of the shares are outstanding. So 96% are owned, 46% by him, and then 50% by people like us and others. And we're all locked up. So then he convinces the indices to include it, even though it has no profits. So it would be excluded from the indices unless they made an exception, which he convinced them, except for the S&P, to do. And you're supposed to wait a certain number of year time before it can get seasoned. They waived all that. So he's basically stuffing this overpriced security into mom and pop's retirement account so he and his VC buddies can cash out. To me, that's theft, really. I mean, call it what it is. And they're just going to keep feeding the ducks. So it's certainly possible that this thing squeezes even to more crazy valuations than we're seeing today. But at the end of the day, this is a $20 billion revenue company that loses $5 billion that will likely never really make money. And when the AI and this, he talks about AI data centers in space, that's not going to happen. It's technologically not possible. And all this stuff that he does to spin tales to get people excited is really just getting people to be his exit liquidity.
Mm.
And so to me,
But
SpaceX is the equivalent of Dogecoin. Mark Cuban and Elon Musk own most of the coins. And then there's this cult of people that own it and think it's worth something. But it's not worth anything. And if Elon sold one Doge would go to zero. Now, SpaceX isn't quite that bad because there is a company. And their satellite business is actually good business. The AI business, we'll see. It's cash flow negative right now, and I think it will be for a long time. But we'll see. And there are a lot of promises made, but I think ultimately, as the lockup expires and the people try to sell, I think that goes down a lot, like a lot.
so what do you say to people that have been buying into it, thinking that this is like buying Microsoft or Apple stocks in the early days?
It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible. When you bought Microsoft or Apple in the early days, you were buying a little tiny market cap company that was going to become necessary infrastructure, right? This is not that. It's starting at $2 trillion valuation, not at 10 million or 20 million or 50 million or 100 million or even a billion. You're starting at 2 trillion. It's impossible. Like somebody said to me, I tweeted about it. He says, well, you just don't understand. This is going to 10x. I'm like, okay, let's do some math together. The US GDP today is 31 trillion. Let's say it grows at 4%, which it's not going to do. It's going to grow at 2, but let's say it grows at 4%. In 10 years, it would be 40 trillion. So you're saying that SpaceX, which is going to 10x, is going to be half of US GDP. One company with no profits is going to be half of US GDP. It's not going to happen. It's a mathematical impossibility.
Before we wrap up, I was just curious. I was watching an interview with you where you were saying that you were going to Italy for vacation. And since I'm from Italy, I want to ask you where do you plan to go to visit
No, we
Italy?
just got back. It was magical. So my wife and I celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary, and
Ah,
we've been to Italy a number of times and done the whole touristy thing. Go to Rome, go to Venice, go to Florence, and take the trains and see all the great things. So someone told us about Ravello, which is 1,500 feet up the mountain above Amalfi on this big peninsula. And so we booked a hotel there, and it was magical. It's absolutely beautiful, little tiny towns, beautiful hotels, and we could walk down to Amalfi, get some hustle bustle, have some nice food, and then walk back up, which is a hard walk up the hill back to Ravello, and went to the Village Champrone and Palazzo Avino for dinner. Two of the best meals I've had in a very long time. Stayed at a place called Palazzo Pascal, which is actually on the other side in a place called Scala. Scala is right next to Ravello. Um, Loved it. Little boutique hotel, 11 rooms. People should go there. It was magic. But actually, the most fun we had, Giovanni, was we went to Ischia for the day. So we got on the
mm,
ferry, went up to and rented a scooter, and we scootered the whole island up to the top of the mountain and just lived the Italian life. So it was great. So we're big fans.
nice. And next time, I recommend you to come to Lake Como, where I live. It's nice. I show you around.
It's the last place we need to go, and we've done all the southern, we've done all the central, and I will take you up on that. So it'd be great.
As usual, it's a great pleasure to talk to you. Always interesting, and hope to see you again on our show.
No, thanks for having me. We'll talk to you again soon. Enjoy the rest of the summer.